Hello, beautiful mamas. I hope you're all doing well and that you're cultivating loving relationships with your children and making lots of great parenting mistakes because that's how we learn. uh, so today I'd like to chat with you a little bit about our expectations about our kids and our fears about our kids and how the thoughts in our own minds really do impact our children and their lives and their behavior. There's a whole field of epigenetics that shows that the environment really affects the organism in a very deep way and can even impact greatly the genes that are expressed within that organism. So we, as the parent, are a very primary aspect of our child's environment, and the way that we interact with our children will have an impact on the behaviors that come out of them, and even possibly even the genes that are expressed within them. It turns on some and turns off some. So we matter in the lives of our children incredibly. We all know this. So here are a couple of little interesting studies that I wanted to share with you, and a study and some anecdotal stories I wanted to share. So this study is about rats, and this researcher wanted to do a study on two different sets of rats. So actually same rats, different people, different groups of people. So the rats, same group of rats, were given to two different groups of people. One group of people were told that these rats that they were given were really smart rats. That's group A. And group B were given the same bunch of rats and were told these are dumb rats. They're really stupid. They're just bred to be dumb. So don't expect much of them. So they all come from the same kind of grouping of rats, but some of them, half of that group went to one group of people, and half of that pile of rats went to another group of people. Treat them like they're smart, treat them like they're dumb. And then they ran a maze at the end of this time that these people had to take care and nurture these rats and train them to go through a maze. That was the task of these people. And they even had signs next to their cages, smart and dumb. So after a while, they did this experiment, and the results were unequivocal. They were astounded by what they saw. The rats that were told that they were smart and were handled in a way thinking that this is a smart rat went through the maze much easier and faster than the rats that were told they were dumb. It's a phenomenal finding. So the researcher got curious. Was it just these, words that we were saying that these rats don't really understand, or was there something else? So he found that the way that we thought about the rats caused us to handle the rats in a certain way. And the people that had group A, smart rats, they thought that the rat was smart. They were more gentle in their touches, and they held the rats a little longer. And the people that thought they had a dumb rat were a little bit more rough and didn't hold the rat as much. So our thoughts as a parent impacts our treatment of our child, and the way we treat our child impacts their behavior. I want to just warn gently, caution us against calling our children smart because of all of the research that Carol Dweck has done on labeling kids as smart or strong. It's called fixed mindset. So we don't want to just say, oh, okay, I'll call my kid smart and write smart around his room. That'll cause me to treat him more gently and lovingly. And that's actually not how it works with humans. So we're a little more complicated than rats. So we don't want to just go around calling our kids smart all the time. At least I don't. You can decide that for yourself. What's helpful with our kids is to comment on their process. Like, wow, you're really working hard on that. And you kept working until you got it. So you can celebrate the end result, but what's more helpful for them to develop resilience and grit, which is so necessary for functional life. Life is hard. We need to learn how to hang in there, work through things. Then we want to comment on the process as much as possible. I encourage you and invite you to comment on the process as much as possible. And we can also, I lost my train of thought. Hold on one moment. Let's see if it comes back. Yeah, it's gone. That's okay. Boop. There it goes. So I'll come back to saying that the way that we think about our children impacts their behavior, because it impacts the way we treat them and handle them. And I think one message in parenting in this is that treating our children more gently will help them perform better. And I do think that that's something we can grab from this rat experiment. This is also shown in the Iditarod dogs, the sled dogs that have to go for miles and miles and miles in the cold, dragging a person on a sled with lots of equipment. And they used to train these dogs by beating them and yelling at them and whipping them. And they found that when they started to train them with positive reinforcement and praise and taps and rubs and connection, they performed a lot better. So it's really important to consider the way that we're treating our kids. However, we can go to extreme with praise and kind of lifting up our kids and saying, you're going to do great, you're going to do great, especially if this comes from a kind of scared place in us. And often it can. So often we can try to lift our kids up from a kind of nervous, anxious place inside. And that's something that's helpful for us as moms to be mindful about. It can cause us to overparent and overprotect. And when we do that, we actually end up crippling our kids. So I want to share this story with you from a podcast called Invisibilia. I highly recommend you to listen to. It's called Becoming a Batman. And this study about the rats was shared in that podcast. And also this story, this beautiful story about a blind man who, when he was about 2 years old, had to have surgery on his eyes for retinal cancer and had to have prosthetic eyeballs. And because of his history and his mother's history, she was able to let go of her fear, to manage her fear of him bumping into things. And when he wanted to play and climb and explore, she let him. She let him. And when he was very young, he was climbing the neighbor's fence, and suddenly the policeman showed up on her doorstep saying, this is negligence. You can't just let your kid who can't see climb a fence. He could hurt himself. So she had a lot of cultural energy around her saying, do not do this. This is bad. But she continued to let him explore. And he learned that by clicking, he could hear what was in front of him and essentially see. He calls it seeing, actually. It was his eyes were his little clicks. And I didn't know this, but apparently a lot of blind children will naturally start to click in order to help them sense what's there. And this mother's son would start doing this. So this boy would start doing this in school, and his teachers would tell him to stop and would tell his mother to tell him to stop clicking because it's not socially acceptable, and they were worried that the kids were going to make fun of him. And she said, he must click, that's how he sees. And she put her foot down against that. So he continued to click, and he learned how to ride a bike. And when he was very young, he would just bomb dive down big hills on his bike. And eventually, he ran into things, and a couple times he smashed his face and really hurt himself. A couple times he ran into a pole. And this is what he says about it. I wrote this down. He says, running into a pole is a drag. Not being able to run into a pole is a disaster. So he opened a nonprofit to help teach kids who are blind how to click so that they can see, and how to not be imprisoned by cultural belief systems that say You need to have someone's arm around you in order to walk. You need to have people carrying your lunch tray for you at lunch. And he developed this nonprofit to coach kids so that they can be more independent and free of this cultural crippling, this doing too much for a child that limits them and cripples them. That I want to say as a mom, I fall prey to. And I practice on a daily basis noticing the way my fears and anxieties about my child is causing me to interact with him in a way that tells him he can't do things on his own. And there's so many ways I do that on a daily basis. And every once in a while I'll catch myself, and my husband and I might talk about it, and we'll work on freeing ourselves of that crippling fear, that fear in us that cripples our kid. So I'm saying this to you because this is a cultural phenomenon. It's probably affects us, those of us who are interested in mindfulness and conscious parenting more, because we are so hyper-focused on our kids. We care so much about our kids that it causes us to kind of want to pad them against life a little bit, and causes us to want to lift them up as high as they can go. And that whole process of padding and lifting up and propping up can hinder their development and success, lifelong success and well-being in the world, because it can slowly degrade their self-esteem, can slowly degrade their sense of what they can do on their own. Daniel Kish is this boy's name, the blind boy's name, and this is what he says. He says, most of the parents of kids who are blind, ended up doing too much for them. When you lighten someone's load, you don't allow them to expand. Most of the parents ended up doing too much for them. When you lighten someone's load, you don't allow them to expand. Amazing. This is parents of blind kids doing too much for them. Parents of blind kids are doing too much for them. It's very probable that those of us who have pretty functioning kids are doing too much for our kids. So I wanted to just share this excerpt from a book called How to Raise an Adult, written by Julie Lithcott-Hames, who was a dean of Stanford for many years. And it's a thick book. There's lots of great material in here. And I just basically flipped open to this page this morning as I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you. So I'm just going to read a little excerpt. So chapter 9, we are hurting their job prospects. In the mid-2000s, when I and my university colleagues resigned ourselves to the fact that overparenting was not a fad, but was here to stay, I wondered what would happen to overparented young adults in the workplace. Surely, if parents felt college was such high stakes that they had to be involved in the minutiae, and students needed and welcomed parental involvement, the workplace would seem to present even greater challenges. Would overparenting parents follow young adults into the workplace as well? As we'll see, the answer turned out to be yes. Millennials in the workplace have been called orchids, those who can't survive outside the greenhouse, and teacups. They chip easily and are ruined. But to me, the most prescient metaphor for young adults sent out into the world after being overparented is veal, a term coined by Massachusetts educator Joe Maruzak, not sure his name there, meaning they're raised in controlled environments and led, metaphorically, to slaughter. None of us took a course called How to Hold Your Kid Back, but overparenting appears to be seriously poor preparation for life in the work world. So I'll skip here. Okay, she goes on to say, helping by providing suggestions, advice, and feedback is useful, but we can only go so far. When parents do what a young employee must do for themselves, it can backfire. For example, in 2014, a mother went on Craigslist offering a finder's fee in the thousands of dollars to anyone who could get her son a job. Is her son a hapless sort, disabled, recovering from serious hardship? No. He's a graduate not only of college, but a prestigious law school, a former employee at 2 clerkships, and a member of the California Bar. Hopefully none of his clients will find out about his mother's ad. I don't know about you, but I want the lawyer who fights for me to have gotten his own job. So there's lots of other examples here of overparenting, parents who came with the child into the job interview as the child was preparing to go in. The staff, could hear the mom in the other room saying, "You're going to do great. You're going to do great. You got this. You got this," which is so sweet, right? Like, I can see myself saying that. I'm wanting to say that to my son. The challenge here is the expectation and the fear. So this is now a young adult, and this mom probably, like, as we open our hearts to her, really wants to let her child know that I'm there for you. The child has probably gotten really used to the mom being there for her or him. And this is just a dynamic that has progressed and continued unchecked. It's just an unchecked system that is born out of love and care. And there's a little anxious quality in that, like, I'm not sure maybe that my child knows that they're going to do a good job unless I say it, and I really need to make sure I say it and tell them. So after listening to this podcast, my husband and I had a little chat. My son is 7 years old, and I've been walking him to school every day. We live right across the street from school. I've been walking him to school and standing in line and waiting with him, and I've been realizing he doesn't really need me to do that. I've been slowly realizing I want this time with him, especially because I'm a working mom, and some days I don't get to see him until nighttime. I want every little moment with him I can get. So my husband and I said we were going to propose to our son and pitch it and frame it in a way that we're showing him we have faith and confidence in him. And we sat him down and we said, we really know that you've been very responsible in the morning, and we see how you know exactly where to go and you know where to line up, and we really think that you've earned our trust to be able to walk yourself to school. Would you like that? And he kind of thought about it a little bit, and I said, there's a couple options. I could walk you all the way to the line. I could walk you to the bike rack and then let you go from there, or we could say goodbye at the house and then you can walk yourself across the street to school. And he thought about it again, and he decided that for now he'd like to have us say goodbye at the bike rack. So I'd walk him kind of to the school, and then he could be off on his own. So this is a big step for me. Some of you might already be, dropping your kids off and letting them walk on their own. But I think what's important is that we meet ourselves where we're at. So where I'm at, what I've been doing that's been a little bit maybe overparenting is walking my child into the line and standing there and waiting with him, and then walking with him in the line to the classroom, which I don't need to do. And I don't think he needs me to do. So I am recognizing I can take a step back. And as I take this step back, I am giving the message to my son, in this case explicitly, but I think it's often implicit. You got this. And I don't have to tell him, you got this. He feels, I got this. Eventually, we're going to be letting him, when he's ready, walk to school on his own. Maybe he wants the company. Maybe he wants a little extra time with me to walk him to the bike rack. Who knows? But I'm going to be sensing and attuning and really looking at my own desires for connection and fears of what happens if I step back a little bit more. This is something that we also experimented with very consciously with our son's homework. When he was in TK, we went for a 5-week sabbatical, and we went abroad. And we needed to do homeschooling with our son. And at that point, homeschooling, he was just basically drawing some pictures. And our teacher had us have him do a weather report every day by drawing what the weather looked like, had us have him draw a picture of what he did during the day, and then narrate to me what he was doing. So what eventually started happening is he would narrate, and I would add in a word or two. And slowly, unknowingly, I was taking over his work. He did not like that. I didn't realize that was happening, but what started happening is he started complaining about not wanting to do this work and kicking and screaming and really unhappy about homework. And this, luckily, was only 5 weeks because he doesn't usually have homework outside of when he was in regular school. But it was a really challenging 5 weeks. And he didn't really love to draw, so that was hard too. And I would sit there with him, and I would try to remain as soft and relaxed as I could so I didn't add tension onto the tension that was already there. But it was very frustrating for both of us. So when kindergarten started, I wanted to try something different. I knew that sitting there next to him, as any loving mother would, and sitting down with him and helping him look through the homework was not going to be helpful for him. And I couldn't help that much anyway because it was in Spanish, and he's in a Spanish immersion program, and I don't speak Spanish. So what we did is we just, said, here's your homework packet. There's 7 pages. You have 7 days to do them. You can figure out how much you want to do each night. And he loved that. He loved it. And once or twice in the very beginning, he didn't end up finishing his homework, and he had to suffer that on his own, and we didn't make a big deal of it. We didn't put any of our own fears and worries about him not doing his homework on it. He suffered that, and then the teacher had him sit down and finish it, and then he, from his own self, his own internal motivation, has taken full ownership of his work. So fast forward now, he's in 1st grade, at the end of 1st grade, and he figures out how much he needs to do every night. We don't go over his homework and check and see what's right and wrong. We let the teacher take care of that because that's what the teacher does, is corrects the homework. We're not there to correct his homework for him and make sure he gets everything right when he turns it in. We believe that making mistakes is a part of learning, so we hope that he can show his teacher where he's making the mistakes so she can teach him what he needs to learn, and to not cover that up by us going in there and helping him correct everything. And he enjoys it, and he has pride in it, and he takes ownership of it. So I think the implicit message I was giving when he was in TK and I was sitting there next to him and kind of adding my own words into his narration of what had happened that day was, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it good enough, and you need my help. Versus, I wonder if I had rewound and just, sat there next to him and just copied exactly word for word what he was saying. I didn't even read it back to him. I think it would have been a much more smooth process, and he wouldn't have balked at it so much. That's just my hunch. I don't really know. But certainly moving forward, that's what's been helpful, is just to back off and let him take ownership and let him use his own brain to figure out how many pages to do a night. And I think what tends to happen with homework is that power struggles come in, and anxiety comes in, the parent's anxiety about whether or not the child will get the homework done, and then what will the teacher say. And the child feels smothered by that anxiety and needs to get out of it. And one way they get out is by saying, no, I don't want to do this work, and then the power struggles start. So any way that we can, from a very young age, give the child the power to take reign over their homework domain sets an expectation for them that we trust you to handle this. Even if you make some mistakes, we know you're going to have some that you don't hand in, and we trust that you're going to be able to figure that out. Like the mom with the kid who is blind and says, I trust you're going to figure out how to see with clicks. I trust it. It's your domain. It's yours to explore. Good luck. Yes, like that. And as Julie Lythcott-Haynes is saying, the impact that that can have on a child in college, the impact, the glowing impact, the sense of agency that that can cause a child to have in the workplace. I got this. This is my domain. I'm used to having my own domain. I know how to navigate my own domain. So I also think of it like a system of muscles. If there's one group of muscles that are doing the job, the other group next to it doesn't have to. Why participate in this if this other bigger muscle has it? And I think that happens in parenting as well. We take on things for our kids that should really be their work, and unknowingly we cause that muscle in them to deteriorate by our overwork of our muscle. And this can come in the form of over worry, over concern, over managing their schedule. I have so many moments coming up in my mind that I could share with you, of moments in sessions with clients who were so frustrated that their children weren't doing more on their own and were having such executive functioning challenges, and who were obviously, and just so obviously dictating to the child what they should be doing pretty much every hour. So it's definitely a chicken or the egg thing. Someone could say, yeah, but if that child has executive functioning challenges, then that mother needs to tell the child what to do every hour. But we could also say that child is blind, so that mother needs to have her arm around him, and someone needs to be carrying his lunch. He's blind. We could say this. And what I want to just offer is, wherever you are at. So for me, I'm walking my child to school and standing in line with him, and that I'm realizing is too much, and too much for him. So wherever we are at, thinking, where is the too much that I'm doing? Where can I step back to create a vacuum for the child to come in and step in and fill in that space? Where am I trying to micromanage my child's domain that really would be better for him if it were his domain to reign over, his domain to have a sense of pride about? And I'll leave you with another little story here. I remember clearly a moment, probably in like 3rd grade or 5th grade. It was in elementary school, and I was working on a project. And it was a creative project, and it was for like a talented and gifted thing. And I was downstairs in the basement tinkering around, and we needed to it was an innovation project, and we needed to invent something. And I was inventing with my Tinker Tots this wheel that would spin to make it easier to feed your cats, so you didn't have to go and grab the food and put it in. You could just turn the wheel. And I think my mom said something to my dad, go down and help her. And so my dad came down, and he's an engineer. He knows a lot about wheels and mechanics and stuff. And he started taking over my darn project and telling me how to do stuff. And I don't remember what happened before my mom said go down and help her. I might have been complaining. I might have said, come and help me. Maybe I was asking for help. But when he started taking over, I just remember this this electrical zing going through my body, and an ouch feeling of, you're stepping on me, kind of. This is mine, and I need to be doing it. So even when a child, let's assume I did ask for help, even when a child asks for help, can we help in a way that helps them help themselves instead of taking over for them? So what does that mean? What does that look like? For instance, whenever my son says, Mom, how do I spell stop? Then I'll say, let's see, and he'll say S, and I'll say, st. And I'll say T. I'll say, I'll say st, and I'll say A. I'll say nope, and he'll say O, etc. So instead of saying, oh, you spell stop S-T-O-P, I help him think about it himself. Every time he asks me how to spell something, that's what I do. So when he started writing and reading and trying to spell things, I hear him sounding it out just like that. I gave him a tool that he can carry inside of him to figure out how to spell when he doesn't know. The sense of agency, a skill. And I think this is so important. I think this is so important. I've seen teachers in school, I've sat down and watched kids who are in like a special ed class, and a kid will be like, how do you spell stop? And the teacher says, S-T-O-P. End class. So it takes a little longer. But if you say, well, let's think about it together, class. Or, great question, try to sound it out and I'll come check. So giving the child a tool, sound it out in your mind and give it your best shot. I'll check, I'll help you if it's wrong, but try yourself. Instead of just relying on us for the answer. They ask us for help, we give them the answer. Doesn't help them. That's crippling. We ask them for help and we give them a way of helping themselves. That lifts them up. That teaches them to fly. So this can also be true with challenges with friends. So, Mom, I'm having this hard time with my friend, blah, blah, blah. Mom might listen for a little bit, and then Mom might say, here's what you should do. The child will usually not respond very well. Child asks for help. Mom gives an advice and suggestion, and as though she knows she's the expert, and usually that will shut a child down, a teenager down, a middle schooler down. So instead, we can sit and help the child or teen think about it. We can help create a thinking space to draw out our child's wisdom so they can feel like they are reigning over their own domain. And at the end of the conversation, we can say, so what do you think you're going to do with such and such? Instead of trying to tell them what to do from our own purview as queen of the throne, knowing what they should be doing with their lives. Not helpful for them. Will cause dependency and reliance on us. And a feeling like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I don't know how to run my life. And we can be sitting with them in the unknown, like, it's hard. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What comes up for you as you think about this scenario and that scenario? Create thinking space. Help them think about it. When we come in with a solution and a suggestion, that usually comes from our own fear. And then our child is receiving the message, my mom is scared about me. She has a lot of fear about my choices. She doesn't trust me and my ability to handle my own life. And another way our fears can impact our kids is when dating starts to happen. And I'll share this story with you from my own life. Not dealing with me actually, but with my sister and my mom. I hope it's okay that I share this story. So I'll have to go back and check it out and see before this goes to a wider audience. So my sister was dating a guy in high school who was mistreating her. And this, of course, caused my mom an incredible amount of agony and a lot of anxiety. And the more my mom would try to tell my sister, this guy's not good for you, look at what he's doing, look at what he's saying, it's hurting you, please leave him, this isn't good for you, I care about you, the more my sister would get into the position of saying, I love him, he's a good guy, stop telling me he's bad. So it became polarized. The more my mom said, look at this, wake up, stop, leave, my sister would say, no, I'm staying, he's good. So my mom was holding, he's bad, and it would cause my sister to hold, he's good more. My mom finally got some guidance around this and some advice that she needs to stop telling my sister what to do. And the quicker she can do that, the faster my sister will be able to wake up on her own and have that awareness in herself, instead of polarizing my sister into only seeing the goodness of it, because my mom was holding all of the badness of it. So when my mom dropped that, took her fears somewhere else to talk about it, stopped telling my sister not to date this guy, my sister woke up like within a couple of weeks. It was incredible. And she ended up leaving her boyfriend. But my mom had stopped telling her in little bits for a while before that, but not in a deep, sustained way. So it was still in the field. My sister could pick up on my mom's concern about it until my mom made that deep commitment to not bring it up with my sister and realized that it would be better for my sister in the long term if she could stop telling her what to do with her own life. And that caused this muscle group of fear and concern to be back where it belonged in my sister. That's my sister's world. That's hers to hold, not my mom's. So the more we as the mother, when our children enter into really unpleasant situations and potentially very damaging situations, of course our first instinct is to try to tell them what to do and tell them all of our concerns. And sure, that's a great, first reaction, and it's out there. But then after that, let's create thinking space. So if my sister said, "Mom, I don't know what to do. He's saying this and doing that, and this is hurting," it would be helpful for my mom to have said something like, "Wow, it sounds like you're really having a hard time with this," reflecting back my sister. "Well, you're not really sure. Part of you wants to stay with him, and part of you is not liking this. Yeah, you don't know what to do right now. But I know you're going to figure this out." And so let's think about it more. What is it that you like about him? What is it that you're not liking? What part of this feels good? What part doesn't feel good? And then at the end of the conversation, so what do you think you're going to do? With real curiosity, not like, well, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to do what you think that I think you should do, because that's what you should do, is what I think you should do. But like really open, what do you think you're going to do? And then be curious and open to their response. It's their life, their mistakes. Their mistakes will help them get a little broken and rebuild, and a little broken and rebuild, like a stronger muscle. That's how a muscle grows. We need to be willing to let our kids fail. We need to be willing to let them arrive late to school. We need to be willing to let them have a hard time figuring out how many pages to do a night when you have 7 pages of homework, so that they can feel like this is my reign, that I know how to do this. So they can grow into self-agency instead of being stuck as teacups or veal, right? So I'll leave you with a quote that I love, that I saw, an anonymous quote, and I post this in my house because it resonates with me so deeply. So I'll leave this with you. I don't pray that you have an easy life, because I know that's not possible. I pray that you have the courage and resources and support to make it through real life. May we offer this message to our children, and may we help them develop those internal resources by stepping back wherever we can and giving them skills to manage their own lives, to feel that they have reign over their own domain. I know it's not easy. I know if there's special needs involved, it's going to be much harder, more complicated, a lot more to wrestle with internally. I know this. And yet I still feel this deep commitment for us as a culture of moms to raise awareness about this very crippling impact that overparenting has on children. Overparenting that comes from love and fear and anxiety. I feel as committed to raising awareness about this as I do to raising awareness about yelling, the impact of yelling and shaming and blaming kids. They're opposite sides of the same coin. There's on one hand yelling and blaming and shaming and disparaging kids, and on the other side is doing too much for them and trying to prop them up too much. Both of them damage children. Okay? It's that important of a message. I feel deeply committed to raising awareness about both of these ends of the spectrum. I fall much more closely to the overparenting end of the spectrum, and I'll be open and honest with you about that. And so my work is to notice where I've overparented, where I'm overparenting, where I'm doing too much, and to consciously rein in that impulse to do too much, and trust and rest in faith that my son is going to figure this out, and that this challenge that's before him will help him grow. So we can be raising adults, not feel. Blessings to you.